I can't thank you enough for coming. My name is John Maher. I am Dean and Department Chair for the Student Services Department at Lake Forest High School. Thanks for bearing through the cold. Looks like we're in for a nice chilly weekend. So, what we're here to do today is to kind of tell you a little bit about the Community Wellness Task Force briefly, and then kind of get into Dr. Reineke's talk about adolescence and hopefully creating healthy adolescents and things to look out for, and he'll get into depth about that. So kind of what I wanted to explain a little bit is the Community Wellness Task Force. It was started in the early months of 2012 after 3 Lake Forest high schools. Students took their lives. After the second one, it was decided that something kind of needed to be done. We needed to communicate a little bit better. So the Community Wellness Task Force was conceived. It met in March of that year. It was determined that the first order of business was to kind of do an assessment of what the resources were in the community as far as mental health services, and also try to obtain the services of somebody outside of the community to help us better focus ourselves as far as what to do and how to handle the situation at hand. So on June 7th of 2012, more than 70 community members got together and we kind of did an assessment. And we talked at great length throughout the entire day. What are our needs? What do we see? What do we need to do? And by the end of it, it was pretty much determined that this group needed to come together, needed to stay, and that Dr. Reineke was going to help us with pretty much what our practice-based, best practice type of interventions for our community, for our teenagers, for our families. So we were very lucky to have him on board. Since those turbulent months in 2012, we've been meeting on a consistent basis with representation that you could see when you kind of walked up to the table out there and did the sign up. We have a large number of different organizations that are part of this. Everybody from the city of Lake Bluff and Lake Forest to Coria to Lead, to the high schools and the middle schools and the elementary schools. And the hospital, of course, who donated this room today for us, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. So we've been meeting, we've been trying to strengthen our communication in the community. It's a great roundtable of people, kind of discussing upcoming events so that we can share instead of competing, more sharing what we can do for each other. One of the great products that have come out since January of 2014 is Texatip. That is a text-based mental health service. So pretty much anybody in the community, it's not meant just for teenagers or adults, can text through the 847 help and talk to a 24/7, 365-day-a-year mental health professional. And that's through texting. If it progresses after that, great. If the person needs more help, if the person just wanted some recommendations at the time and that's all they needed, that was fine too. It's as I said, a 24-hour confidential service. So we've been really proud of that. It's been kind of staying low to the ground. We've been building it up. I think we're going to continue to build it with the help of Lead, who's been very, very instrumental in helping us really carry this forward. In front of you or on your chairs is a little card. Throughout the presentation, if you have any questions, please write them down. If you just kind of want to raise your hand and get one of us, we'll be walking around, we'll collect them. After the presentation, which will go to approximately 8 o'clock, if you want to stay, wonderful, and we'll have a little Q&A. If you want to leave, please, that's fine too. So without further ado, Dr. Mark Reineke, he's from the Feinberg School of Medicine at Northwestern University. He's a national expert on suicide and depression, and he really has been a great influence and great help for us with our task force. So, all right, thanks.
for coming. I hope we can be somewhat informal about all of this. What we wanted to do this evening was to share with you a bit. This really is a community discussion, a conversation, to talk with you about what the task force has been doing, what we've been endeavoring to do and hoping to do looking forward, to talk to you about what your thoughts about all of this, and then to answer any questions that you have, so that it really is a conversation between the task force, this wellness task force, and you. Because we view this as, and I was really impressed with this, to be quite honest. When you look at the sign, the little collection of the organizations, this task force really is you. It's a broadband collection, an integrated collection of individuals from the community who came together really in a time of tragedy and have worked very hard to help teens and children develop well, to grow and be happy and healthy. And so I wanted to share with you what we've been doing over the last 3 years, because it really is, there's a lot of success that's been had with this, and it comes from the community. So here we have what we have, teens. This is what they look like. This is our characters. And I got a laser here. Let me show you this. Wait a minute, she's going to come up. Where'd she go? Her. That looked like my daughter when she was in high school. Now she's in college. She actually looks proper, wears dresses, but that's what teens look like. This is who the task force is. This is who we are. It's a community organization built from within in Lake Forest and Lake Buff that includes a broad range of schools, both public and private, Northwestern Lake Forest Hospital, Northwestern University, Lake Forest College, both Lake Bluff and Lake Forest municipal governments, police, fire, and community mental health centers, community organizations, a broad range of them, churches, and you. Parents are part of this as well. And when I say what have we done, I mean the collective we. What's been accomplished? Well, really a number of things. We started by developing a prevention algorithm, which I'm going to share in just a second, a way of thinking about how we can approach depression and suicide among teens in the community. From that, we did a search around the world. Our search extended all the way to the Blue Sky program in Australia, to programs developed here in the United States and through the Centers for Disease Control, to programs that came out of the UK, from Oxford and Cambridge and Manchester. And what we did with this is selected what we viewed as the best of class, the best approaches that could be put into place here on the North Shore. This included a range of things, from screening for depression and suicidal ideation in the schools, at the hospital, and most recently, and this is important, we call it Every Child, Every Encounter, with pediatricians in the community. So anytime a youngster comes in for a checkup or for their annual, or they want to join a sports team, the physician will inquire, how has he or she been feeling? Any thoughts of death or suicide? So it only takes a few seconds, but it's become an integral part of the physical exam that every child gets every year. Staff training. At the high schools, at the junior highs, we've done trainings in coping with depression and what's called gatekeeper training, which is screening that anyone can do. You can do this. We can teach this to you, for how to identify youngsters who are at risk and to refer them to a professional. We've embedded these programs into their health curriculum in the high school, which every child gets. We have Text-A-Tip, which is based upon the Safe to Tell program, which was developed in Colorado after Columbine. We've developed a clinician triage in the hospital and a rapid referral list. So you know how hard it can be to find a mental health professional with, oh, I can see you, but it's going to be 6 weeks. No, that's not good enough. What we've done is come up with a list, which is available, of individuals who can see someone within 48 hours. And this is critical when a teenager is really in acute distress. And finally, as we're doing here, community awareness, putting this out on websites, putting this out through materials that come from the school, trying to bring this into people's homes so that they can use what we've been doing. So this is what we've done. And the question then becomes, well, this is the matrix. And what we have here is primary, secondary, and tertiary prevention. So this would be, how would you put it, universal, every youngster in the school. Secondary would be youngsters who are at risk. So something has happened where their mood is starting to decline. And tertiary would be youngsters, teens who are actually currently depressed or who have had suicidal ideations or behaviors. And so what you do is you develop interventions for each of these groups in the school, the home with parents, in the community, and through the hospital. And the notion then is each of those boxes in the matrix we wanted to fill with what's the most effective intervention available right now. The notion then is we're not doing one thing, we're doing many things. And even though what you find in the research is that suicide is very, very hard to prevent, is instead of focusing upon one intervention, we've got a broad band set of interventions that we're bringing into play, piece by piece, using the resources that are here in Lake Forest and Lake Bluff, and what we find is that they work. It's a great idea. How are we doing? It's good. It's good. I said 2 years. I didn't have the exact date. It's been 3 years. We haven't had a teen suicide here on the North Shore since we put these interventions into place. This is the good news. When you look in the high school, the emotional tone in the schools is improving. And these are, let's be clear about this, these are tough schools. These are academically challenging. Kids feel stressed, particularly as they move through high school and they're thinking about college and graduation and what they're going to be doing. The tension that youngsters are under today is more than when you and I were growing up, and it's palpable. And what we're trying to do is to enhance the tone. We're trying to help teens to be supports for one another, and when they see a classmate who's, how would you put it, dropping under the waves, to give them a hand and pull them on board, to help them out. It's changing the tone of the school. What we've done is tried to have broad community involvement, and really, as you were saying, to coordinate the resources so that this is not a slipshod sort of approach, but rather an integrated and systematic approach. Seem reasonable? That's the good news. It's worked. It's been a great endeavor for the last 3 years. Here's the problem. There is still cause for concern. This is from the state of Illinois data, and what you see is percent of youth in Lake Forest who have experienced suicidal ideations, thoughts of killing themselves in the past year. Look at this, 13, 14, 17, 19%. This is not good. Percent of youth in Lake Forest and Lake Bluff who are clinically depressed over the course of a year. That means 2 weeks or more of depressive symptoms. 18, 18, 30, this is the transition to high school, not good. 11 and 25, this is right when they're thinking about, we were talking about this a little while ago, taking the ACTs, the SATs. And then the transition to college. Now here's application, you can see it jumping up here. This is not good. For however good our interventions are, we still have quite a significant percentage of youngsters, of teens here in Lake Forest and Lake Bluff, who are distressed, who are really struggling with this. This is who we're trying to reach out and help. It's worth noting, this is a public health problem. These are data from the Centers for Disease Control. I must admit they are a bit old. They're 2003. I've been looking for newer data, but I haven't found them. If anybody knows of them, please let me know so I can update my slide. But what we see is sobering. Oops, 1 second. One is that suicide, at least as of then, was the third leading cause of death in teenagers, in 16 to 24-year-olds. That's how the Center for Disease Control calculates teenagers. And what's worth noting is it accounts for more deaths than all medical illnesses combined in that age group. So depression and suicide are quite lethal in teenagers. I'm troubled by this, though, for a reason, which is that, and you've probably seen this, homicide rates among teenagers in the United States have been going down over the past 5 years, whereas since 2004, suicide rates among teens have been going up and then stabilized in about the last 2 or 3 years. I wouldn't be, given how close these two are, I wouldn't be surprised if suicide is now in the second position. It's a concern. It's common. Literally, millions and millions of youngsters across the United States think about death and make attempts and seek medical attention for them. There are myths, things that we think about suicide that are simply not true. And you can ask yourself, how do you feel about these things? You can't stop a suicide. Discussing it with a teen will just make it worse. It's not true. I've actually never, if you ask yourself, have you ever encountered a teen who said, suicide? I've never really thought of that, but yeah, that's a good idea. It just doesn't happen. Rather, what you find is if you can honestly and openly discuss it with them, they're actually reassured by it. I have a metaphor for it. I say it's like looking at, over, if you've been to the Grand Canyon, you know what I'm talking about. You're sitting on that donkey, you're going down the edge, or you go to the edge and you look over, that is a long way down. And being able to stand with the teenager and talk about the things that they really, really fear without flinching, that is a long way down. What do you say we step back from the edge here together? Is actually very reassuring to them. Talking about it doesn't make it worse. Only experts can prevent suicide. Not true. It's something that all of us can do in the schools and in the homes. They keep their plans to themselves. That's actually not true. Signals are sent. They are sent all around. My daughter, she's been growing up with this. I worked with depressed teens for a career. And she comes up to me, this is about 2 years ago. She goes, Dad, I'd like you to look at something. One of my friends posted a poem on her Facebook page. And I could call it up, and it's an interesting poem. And it was quite clearly a suicide note. She is sending the signal to the world of how she is feeling. Now, it's interesting, we talk about the code of silence in teenagers. I said, you know something, my daughter is Gracie. I said, we really need to do something. I need to call her parent. No, Dad, you can't do that. She's not going to be my friend. She'll never talk to me. Gracie, we need to do something. So the adult stepped in, called Mom, and what does Mom say? Not, I'm so horrified, oh my God. No, we weren't aware that she had posted this on Facebook, but we had thought something was wrong. We have an appointment with her psychiatrist this week. Now, the interesting thing then is, this is a good example of the text-to-tip. In the back of my daughter's mind, she knew something was seriously wrong, and she shared it with her father. She shared it with an adult. And it was my responsibility to take action on it. That's what we're trying to have in the high school and in the community. Teenagers know when somebody is slipping under the waves. My daughter knew what was going on, and in the back of her mind, it was troubling her. We want to encourage kids that it's safe to say, it's safe to tell. Just text us, it's anonymous. They need the notion that we as adults are going to be there to back them up. And not just as, how would you put it, compassionate listeners, oh, that must be terribly hard for you. But rather, we are going to be there to pull them into the lifeboat. We're going to take action to save them. It's a very different approach that comes from text-to-tip than any other suicide prevention hotline. And that's one of the reasons that it's so effective. But they don't. They send the signals. They don't keep the plans to themselves. People who talk about it don't do it. Not true. Once they decide, there's nothing you can do to stop them. Not true. Statistically and conceptually, suicide is like a summer storm. That it will blow up very quickly and very violently. The tornadoes will come down, and 30 minutes later, the sun is shining, and you're standing there going, looking at the destruction around, going, what in the world happened? They are acute, very violent, very dangerous events that will pass fairly quickly. And our goal then is to help the child or the teenager through that period. Tomorrow the sun will come out. There's a line from Albert Camus that I really like. He says, at the heart of every winter beats the unstoppable spring. Is that it? Beats the, somebody look it up on Google. Somebody Wikipedia this. In the heart of every winter beats the unstoppable spring. It's something like that. Anyway, you get the idea. Why? Well, because moms are stressed out, dads are stressed out, teachers are stressed out, kids are stressed out. I was looking at this one. My daughter's got that book. That one too. Yep. This is what they're going through. And it's not good. For her, it's just not good. So, as a parent, then, what can you look for? Well, there's a number of things. Certainly, look for a teen, I put the key ones in red, who is sad, down, and blue. It's sort of a given. That they feel hopeless and pessimistic. That my future is bleak. There's nothing that can be done. Anxious, but also it's sort of an agitated state. It's like a live wire sparking on the ground where I just have to make this stop. Relax, it's all right. No, they really can't. They feel so tense and anxious. Irritable, angry, volatile. Yeah, you're going to be sorry for what you did. You don't want to hear that. Impulsivity, declining grades and school performance, social withdrawal and isolation. sitting in their room just, I don't know, being online and playing video games, not good. Self-harm, this is the kids who are cutting themselves and the like, and it's a very interesting thing. This comes to us from Tom Joyner down in Florida State. Viewing yourself as a burden to others. People, I'm just a crummy kid, they're gonna be happier when I'm gone. You know, people will be better off without me. If you put these two together, it really indicates risk, because by cutting yourself and engaging in self-harm, you are slowly approaching the ability to attempt suicide. Attempting suicide is actually a very difficult thing to do. Our urge to live, to protect ourselves, is quite strong. And so you have to practice it, if you will. And self-injurious behaviors are a way of practicing. If you put those together with alcohol and substance abuse, you've really got a problem. Depression plus alcohol is an unholy combination. 70% of kids who attempt suicide or commit suicide have alcohol or drugs in their bloodstream at the time. And if you think, well, why would that be? One is they're self-medicating. Alcohol is an anxiolytic, but it's also a depressant. It will make them actually feel worse. Drugs, marijuana, it's an anxiolytic. They feel better, they feel mellow, but it impairs judgment. You put depression, suicidal thoughts, and hopelessness together with impaired judgment, very bad things will happen. So if I see alcohol and drugs in conjunction with depression, the metaphor I use is it's the hurricane flags on the beach are flying. That's when the youngster, I want him to come in and see me this afternoon. If you hear direct suicidal thoughts, I wish I was dead, I'm going to commit suicide, I'm going to end it all. My thought on this is, when we hear these, we should be alarmed. You know, don't take it, you know, if I don't say anything, we just let it, it's going to pass. No, they're going to keep sending the message until somebody receives it. So if somebody says this, what I tell my grad students is suicide is not a normal part of childhood. It's really not. So if they say something that looks like a direct suicidal statement, take it seriously. Where is this coming from? Indirect suicidal statements. I'm tired of life. This is never going to change. It's not worth it. I can't take, I put in fill in the blank. I can't take anymore. No one's going to miss me. No one cares. I'm not going to be around much longer. I got this from a teenager just this week. What's the point of life? This is an interesting one. You know, the earth, the sun is going to become a white dwarf and turn us all to a cinder. What's the point of life anyway? You're 16 years old. Where did this come from? But this notion that my life has no future, I have nothing that I can look forward to, that's nothing for a teenager to be thinking. Teenager years are the times when you're planning your future, and thinking about your values, and thinking about your occupation, your relationships, and all the things that are spreading out in front of you. And when you don't have that, that's a problem for a 16-year-old. So this concern, what's the point? Now listen to that. You won't have word, they'll be better off without me. And then this is another one. They'll be sorry for fill in the blank. She'll be sorry for breaking up with me. He'll be sorry, the teacher's going to be sorry for suspending me. They're going to be sorry for what they did. These are sort of manipulative attempts, and they're very characteristic of teenage years. The central themes that you're looking for then, hopelessness and pessimism. Helplessness. There's nothing I can do. My problems are just intolerable. I can't take this anymore. The interesting thing is, the problems of adolescence, 10 years on, you know, do you really care what you got on that quiz in trigonometry? Nobody does. Nobody does. Teenagers do, but you and I've forgotten about it. I don't know about you. But they don't have that long-term perspective. That they're not only intolerable, but they're insurmountable and unsolvable. And what we want to see is that there's always a solution. Then there's tunnel vision. This is what Farbelow talked about, is that they see suicide as the end of their problem, the way to resolve their pain. And what we want them to see is that, you know, there's so many other solutions. There's 10 things that you can do to resolve the problem, and all we have to do is wait, like the thunderstorm. Wait for the storm to pass. Next week it's going to be fine. They need to know that. You look for behavioral cues. Suicide notes, these are very, very uncommon in teens. So when you see a suicide note, automatically take it seriously. But like my daughter's friend, putting out lyrics and poems on the internet, Facebook, that's what got this up here. Talking about it, getting a gun or pills. The way I put it is any behavior raises my alarm level. And by that, as we saw, suicidal ideation was pretty common. That just tells me that the child is in distress and they feel it's hopeless. But when they take action, when they take the pills out of the medicine cabinet, when they pick up the razor blade and look at it, when they write the note, they have crossed from thought to action. And I take that very, very seriously. We look for alcohol and drug use, we mentioned that, withdrawal and loss of interest, and a lot of times now what you're going to see is teens trolling the internet looking for, what's the final exit? There's a whole number of websites that will tell teens how to do it. They start trolling, looking for memes. This is not a good sign. Once again, this is an action, an active attempt to engage suicide as a behavior. When you see any of these things, do take it seriously. So, what can be done? One is, I said, talk to your teen, talk to your kid. And rather than being directive or simply reassuring, it's not that bad, it's going to be better. Rather, focus on understanding their thoughts and feelings. Put it in the form of a question. What leads you to think that? Why is this so serious? What do you think it could be better tomorrow? What are the things you could do? Allow them to come up with potential solutions and other ways of thinking about it, rather than just being a doc or a parent telling them. But the notion is, talk to them about what's really on their mind, openly. Second is listen. Take their depression, anxiety, and thoughts of death seriously. Don't dismiss them. Monitor their depression, anxiety, pessimism, and alcohol and substance abuse. And particularly if you see things starting to slide, you want to ask why. Where is this coming from and why is it happening now? Empathic and supportive listening. And this is a little trick. I borrowed this from Marsha Linehan, who is a psychologist out at the University of Washington in Seattle. She talks about an approach that she calls dialectical behavior therapy, but we'll set that aside for now. The notion in it, though, is that you validate what the person is experiencing. Of course it feels horrible if you've gotten that D in trigonometry. God, how could you not feel terrible that your boyfriend doesn't want to go out to fill in the blank with you? God, that's got to be awful that you didn't get into Brown. Validate the experience, and then, after they feel that they are understood, you feel like I got what's really on your mind? And I'll ask teens that. You feel like I understand? Anything I'm missing? Then I switch to change. I wonder if there's another way to look at this. I wonder what could be done. Yeah, you didn't get into Brown, but you did get into Champagne. It's not bad. Actually, I got to tell you a story. We digress. I realize this is being recorded, so my daughter may hear this. My daughter got waitlisted at her first choice school, which was University of Chicago. She wound up at Champaign. She loves Champaign, I must say. If any of you are Illini, you know what I'm talking about. She just loves it down there. She is just vibrating. She loves it down there. But last summer, she took a class at University of Chicago in the philosophy department. She had a directed study with the chair of the philosophy department. I'm like, wait a minute. That means you and him in a room together, and that means, like, if you haven't done the reading, there's nobody who you can, like, look at your paper and hope that somebody else will answer the question. This is really the deep end of the pool. God, did she work, she worked, she worked. She got a good grade, that's fine. She comes home and she goes, Dad, University of Chicago, what was I thinking? and that's the point. She thought that's what she wanted, and she's so much happier at another place. There's always the opportunity, in the literature they call it goal replacement. If you can't get the thing that you thought you wanted, shift and get another goal. You could be happier. Who would have thought? But that notion then, validate, I get why you're so upset, and then change. Is there another way to approach this? Is there another way to think about it? That's the essence of overcoming this. And finally, if needed, if you've got a bad vibe about this as a parent, seek treatment. What to do? Actually, I got to tell you, is this on the handout?
Yes,
Yeah,
they are.
we were talking about this on the way up here. I felt so nice about this. I thank you very much. Because this came from a chapter that I wrote a number of years ago. And I was going to say, as an academic, what you hope is that somebody besides your mother reads your work. And here she makes a little outline of something from one of my chapters, and I was like, wow, somebody read my chapter. Let me share it with you. What this is I was sitting, this is a number of years ago, I was thinking, what makes for a good, not a specific research project or a specific data point, but the essence essence of a good parent is what? This is what I came up with. First, a good parent is nurturing. They provide a roof and food and support for their child. Second, they're protective. They keep the kid out of trouble. I remember saying the only time Gracie's never been whacked, except once. And she was about 3 years old, and her little hand was coming over the top of the stove to touch that little blue thing that was coming out. Wham! She said, "Ah, you hit me!" Yeah, I sure did. It was one trial learning. You were not to stick your finger into the little blue thing. Parents keep their kids from doing things that they are going to regret. We serve a protective function. Instrumental. We teach them, and educators will know this. This is Vygotsky. We teach them to do things that are just beyond their current level of ability. Whether it's a social skill or how to conjugate a Spanish verb or how to do a calculus problem. We teach them things that are just beyond their current level of ability. We give them feedback. We model adaptive behavior. And as you know, we don't just model well-executed behavior, but successive approximations. Failure and resilience, how you overcome it and can succeed. That's what we model for them. From Barry Brazelton, the pediatrician, we teach them that life is about reciprocity. It's about discourse and conversation. It's about hearing as well as being understood. And finally, the way I put it is parents are the hard drive of the relationship. We carry the memory of stuff that's worked and not worked. And so when your kid comes and says, "I don't know what to do," you've been in this situation before. Didn't this happen last year? Remember when Susie came over? Why did we do that? Why don't we try that again this year? You serve as the hard drive. And if you put these things together, what you have is a supportive and close relationship with your child or your teenager. What about sense of security? Now this comes straight out of John Bowlby and Mary Main and Mary Ainsworth. This is the old attachment literature. What you want in your relationship with your child and with your teenager is really three things. To be reliable, and I mean that in the statistical sense. To be consistent and predictable, not erratic. To be responsive. When they express a need, we have their back. We are there for them when needed. And affectionate. There's a sense of warmth and, at a minimum, sort of non-punitiveness in the home. If you put these three things together, along with these characteristics, that creates the environment for positive development in childhood and adolescence. Which means what we are is we're all scaffolds. As a clinician, this is what I do. As a parent, this is what you do. Is you're scaffolding and putting structure and guidance around their development, their cognitive development, emotional development, social development. And this is another Vygotskian slide. What it is, as you know with scaffolds, they're always a step ahead of the construction. The crane is always just a level above where the floor is. And that's the way it should be. Where you are is guiding them to where they are going to become next week, next month, next year. The interesting thing about scaffolds, and you notice with teenagers, but I gotta be me, I gotta go out and you gotta let me go. All my friends go out till 2 in the morning and they don't care. I got you. Right, good. The way I look at it is pulling the scaffold away prematurely. If you've got a building that's not done, and you pull the scaffold away prematurely, what do you get? Nothing. You got an unfinished building, right? Until a storm comes, until a stress is applied. And that's when the wall falls down and 3 workers get killed and they call in OSHA, right? That's when trouble happens. Scaffolding is just to guide the construction. Remember, scaffolds aren't weight-bearing either. They don't actually hold up the building. All they do is guide the development. And if you pull it away prematurely, typically nothing happens. They're fine until a stress or a problem shows up in their life. And that's when the real troubles can start. So you can see where I'm going with this metaphor. As a clinician and someone at the hospital, but also as parents, we want to keep the scaffold in place until construction is completed. And then you pull it away and the building can stand whatever storm comes across the Midwest in the winter. But you've got to have construction done. What are the resources that you have for this? Well, there's a whole range of them, and they're really right here on this sheet. Everything from the hospital, from Northwestern Lake Forest, to the schools, to Croya and LEAD, and all manner of community resources, to our lab, the CAM lab, that's the Child and Adolescent Mood Lab at Northwestern, to Lake Forest College, to Texatip. There's a whole range of resources that are available to you that you can turn to. And I have something I want to tell you about, which is the NMT project, which is a project we have down in our clinic in the CAM lab, which is, well, I'll get to that in a second. So looking ahead, what does the group want to do? What are we trying to do in the group? One is technology. We're looking for ways to bring, how would you put it, tools for managing mood, depression, and thoughts of death, and anxiety and agitation into kids' hands in real time. So we're working on internet-based intervention. We talked before with the meeting about the cognitive bias modification, some things that can be done to prevent depression. And this is extra cool. We are writing a grant this month to the Centers for Disease Control to develop an app that will put all of these resources into kids' hands in real time, which I think would be really, if we could do this in the high school up here, that would be great. I'm not sure the CDC is going to like it because we've already rolled out a lot of these interventions already, so they may want a new school that's never been exposed to what we're doing, but we'll see. But I really am excited about this because then these are going to be things that they can just push the button and the app will help them through whatever is stressing them out and troubling them right then. They won't have to go and talk to a clinician or talk to somebody. They can just have it right there with them. It's going to be really cool.
Can I ask you a question about that?
Sure.
You talked about that CDM about trying to prevent depression.
Yes.
I'm coming at it from a medical perspective. I thought depression was something that may be chemical or
Yes.
versus situational versus.
No. Take out the verses. If you look at, excuse us while we talk a little bit about the biology of depression. For sure there are genetic influences, but the heritability indexes for bipolar is very strong. It's like 0.8. But for unipolar depression, for regular depression, it's about 0.35, 0.4. So 60% of the variance is accounted for by environmental factors. Now the interesting thing though, so that for sure there is a biological substrate to it. I was giving a talk, not a talk, I was talking to a reporter, I think it was the Boston Globe or the New York Times, I forget. And we're going back and forth about, what was it about, nature versus nurture in the etiology of depression and what maintains depression. And we went for about a half an hour, and I was telling, it's the environment and it's the biology and it's the interaction. He goes, yes, but is it genes or is it an environment? I said, that's such an old way of thinking about it. And he goes, yes, but isn't it all in the brain? I said, at some level, everything occurs in the mush of the brain. And as soon as I said that, I was like, oh no. Don't you know that's the only quote he used? Dr. Reineke says, at some level, everything occurs in the mush of the brain. And so is it biological? Yes, absolutely. But the notion then is you can, I mean, the brain is a reactive organism. It helps us to adapt to our environment. And so it's quite responsive to both environmental interventions and reductions in social stress and in different types of psychotherapy. The ways we think about things influence the ways our brain reacts to them. In fact, in the NMT project, what we're doing is we're actually doing fMRI with teens who are depressed, and the notion is that, how would you put it, changes, what we're hoping to see is do psychotherapy, which we know is going to reduce depression, have an effect on the way the brain processes rewards in these very fundamental systems within the brain. And we suspect that the ways that psychotherapy and counseling affects reward systems in the brain is similar to the ways that medications do. But that's an empirical question, that's a research question. We're trying to understand how psychotherapy exerts its effect. And it does, at some level, you're right, it's all in the mush of the brain. Now, from a treatment perspective, really the best is, my perspective, is the combination of psychotherapy and medication management, typically an SSRI or an SNRI. But there's a key thing here. When you look at the data, and I'm happy to show it to you, I've got it on my computer. Medications have an acute effect on level of depression in teens, but the effect on suicidal ideations is not greater than the placebo. The effect on, they're great for accelerating gains in treatment for the depression, but they don't have a specific effect on suicide. In fact, that's why the black box came in, is for about 1 to 2% of kids, they actually potentiate suicidal ideations. And if you want, we can talk about what that might be. But CBT, these types of evidence-based psychotherapy, they do have a specific effect on the suicidality. So the way I put it is, if a youngster is simply depressed, you can either use medication or CBT. Both of them will be effective. Some parents prefer medications because they're relatively inexpensive and efficient. Some people prefer psychotherapy. It takes a little longer, but it's not a medication. For depression, that's fine. You can go either way. For a youngster who's depressed and has suicidal thoughts, they really should have CBT in the mix, either alone or in conjunction with medication. The combination approach gets you the fastest gains, and it takes about 3 to 4 months. How would you put it? It's effective for about 85% of cases, so which is not bad. It's not bad. But the combination approach, as a clinician, I'm not a purist. I think what the data tells me is the combination approach is the preferred. You get the fastest gain and the stable gain. So, okay, so we want to change the culture of adolescence, and we want to, this is something to really think about. It's been years since we've had a suicide up here. We shouldn't become complacent. As we saw, we've got kids in the community with thoughts of death and suicide and depression. This is something where it's important, particularly with new neighbors and young parents who haven't been through the tragedies that we've all been through a couple of years ago, to bring them up to speed. That this is something that really does require vigilance and continuing effort, lest it happen again. We all live in Tornado Alley, and we really do need to have our basements with doors to get into. I don't want to be complacent about this. So this is the NMT project. That's not what it should be a 14. It's open to 14 to 16-year-olds who happen to be depressed. Also, we're looking for normal controls. Anybody who's not depressed, that's good. You get 12 weeks of CBT with senior faculty clinicians at Northwestern Medical School. It's immediate care, so if you've got a youngster who needs somebody and you don't want to wait to find a doc, we can literally see a teenager next week. No wait. There's no charge, and in fact, we give an honorarium. You get money. Teams like that. For travel and for time and for participating, because we appreciate people who participate in our projects. It does mean, though, coming down to Northwestern, down at the city. We don't have that here, but it's a train ride. And if you're interested, all you need to do is contact us, Northwestern Research Group at northwestern.edu. Does it work? Yes. This is the data from our study on the TAS, the Treatment of Adolescents with Depression study. What you can see is the slope. The blue is the suicidal ideations coming down over the 12 weeks, and the sort of the mustard color is level of depression coming down over 12 weeks. OC just means observed cases. So this is everybody who was in the study gets evaluated, whether you stayed in the study or dropped out. So this is a very conservative analysis. And what you can see is the slope down in depression and suicide. The other thing that you see is this actually has an effect on suicidal behavior. So these are maintenance of gains. So this is over 18 months after receiving treatment for suicide. What's the probability of another attempt? Usual care in the community versus CBT. The likelihood of not having another suicide attempt is substantially greater when you have cognitive behavior therapy, the type of treatments that we advocate, relative to just community care. These treatments, they do some good, which gives us happy kids and hope. And that's it. There you go. Thoughts, questions?
Yeah, we'll pick up any cards that people have.
Yeah, what do you, yes.
The NMT project,
Yes.
the teachers go there, how often? How often do you?
Okay, it's 12, okay, the NMT project.
Can you restate the question?
Yeah, the question
for
is,
audio?
how often is the treatment in NMT in the project? It's 12 weeks of treatment, so our goal is to help kids to feel better fast. They technically can come in once a week, so 12 sessions, but if they need to come in or you would like them to come in more often, it's really quite flexible. So I could see them, I'm one of the therapists in the trial, I could see them twice a week. You don't usually need to see kids more than twice a week, but twice a week is a pretty, they'll start to feel better pretty quickly. So once or twice a week for 12 weeks. Other thoughts? Yes, sir.
First teacher's pet, the quote, "In the midst of winter, I found there was an ending in invincible summer."
Okay, in the midst of winter, I found within me is an invincible summer. There we go. Thank you, sir. Great.
But some of the statistics on Lake Forest youth that you showed earlier were shocking in terms of the frequency of
Right.
drinking and on a variety of different things. How does that compare to national norms?
Do you have an answer for that? The question is, the norms, two things. One is, let's let her answer. The question is, the numbers seem high, shocking even on levels of depression and suicidality in Lake Forest. I'm actually not surprised by it. I think they are comparable to national norms, to be quite honest, but I'd be interested in your thoughts on it.
That data is from the Illinois Youth Survey that our students take, and I know Andy Duran unfortunately couldn't be here tonight. He works for LEAD, and he helps us interpret the data and does presentations, and so we might have to get that information out to you. Todd, do you know how it compares?
That's the best you could say at this point. He does a nice job with graphs and all sorts of things, so we want to misrepresent.
Those numbers, though, came straight from the Illinois state data. And my sense when I looked at them is that they were not out of line with national norms. So I actually would have hoped they would have been lower, given all of the efforts that we've been putting in. But they seem to be within an error band of the national norms. Other thoughts? Yes?
Is it national norms for affluent communities?
No, it's national norms nationally. I've not seen it broken down by SES. Yes?
I think it was last year, I had it with me, but there was from the state, there was, I don't know if it's not the task force or through the health council, but there was a breakdown by county of, and then by communities within counties of number of attempted suicides,
Right.
number of completed suicides. And I just can remember seeing that at the start that Lake Forest was still on a higher.
It's on the higher band still?
Well, and this was for adults. not
Okay, for
kids.
adults, right. Yes?
I think this organization is great that it came in at such a bad time and so sad. My question is how are you educating the students? And at what age, like, is this brought into the curriculum, into the student body?
Sure. The question is, where does it come in and how is it? I don't know if someone from the school would like to comment
Do you want to
on
speak,
that.
do you want to speak for DeerPath first and,
To
or
talk.
for
Yeah,
67?
she can talk.
Emily,
We started
we
with
have-
the high schools and then have moved down to the junior highs, but you want to comment on this?
Yeah. So we also have Emily Correa, and she serves as our emotional wellness coordinator for our K-8 district. She works with emotional wellness teams at all of our schools. And also, we have we have 4 school psychologists in our Lake Forest school system K-8, and there's psychologists at Lake Bluff as well. We also have social workers, and they help us implement. The state of Illinois has social emotional learning standards, and we also have a risk watch program, and there's a mental health arm of that. And so we work with students and look at social, emotional, and behavioral development. So we have benchmarks, we do some screenings, we have individual counseling available, we have group counseling available, and then we're very lucky to be in an area that has a lot of rich community resources. So we also have at our disposal a list of qualified psychologists and social workers that can work with the family system privately that we can refer to, as well as some that are free of charge for parents that fits with their family better. So, Emily, do you have anything else to add to that? Do you want to talk about advisory for a second?
That's what I was just
Come,
gonna
come
add.
up so the audio will pick you up. She spearheads a lot of programs for us.
Well, I wasn't planning on being on stage tonight, but I'm really happy to be here and see all of you here as well. As Ingrid was saying, at DeerPath Middle School, we have the 5-6 side and the 7-8 side. Both sides we have an advisory program, which is really our focus on preventative social emotional learning. And so basically, once a week on each side of the building, we have about 12 to 14 students, which is a really good ratio, student-to-teacher ratio, get together. And it's not the homeroom groups, so this is just a mixed conglomerate of students that come together. And we have the curriculum, which is really based on our character traits in the district. And so we just try to get students to talk about things that are going on with them, to sort of have open forum, have a place where it's okay to talk about, you know, what kind of things are spiking, or we really center our curriculum on respect and integrity, honesty, sort of the character traits that we're really pushing to give students that self-knowledge and that place to be heard. So this year it's been a really successful advisory program on both sides. And so we're looking to grow this program. We're also looking into many character education programs, which Randy Sprick is a program that we're going to be looking into, which is a really well-structured program that sort of, it's a behavioral tiered system where we have the general, we have the secondary and the tertiary. But what the basis of all of this is really, we're just wanting our students to understand the importance of knowing themselves, the importance of getting along with their peers, the importance of their words, how they use them, what they say. And so really it's that relational component, and that goes relationships with others and relationships with themselves. But, we're really looking to grow the program, so thank you.
And John, the high school?
Sure. Hope you don't mind if I just stay seated. So at District 115 Lake Forest High School, what we do is we have 3 social workers. We have 2.2 psychologists on staff. We see kids individually in what we call student support roundtables, which are social emotional groups. We have, I think, 9 going right now. We work with Croya. They come in, we co-teach peer training, and we run 2 classes, 1 each semester. They go for 10 weeks. It's all about how to help a friend, how to be active listening, how to report if you feel like there's something wrong, similar to what Dr. Reineke was saying. Pretty much the student code of silence, it's kind of working beyond that. So we have those interventions in place, plus we have Health and Wellness for Life, which is a full year health class. In that, we really go deeply into mental health, into depression, into coping skills, what that all looks like. We kind of decided to take a health curriculum that's usually 1 semester and expand it over a year. So and next year, I believe all of our freshmen will be taking Health and Wellness for Life. So that's a great jump, especially considering when you look at that statistic from 8th to 9th grade. You know, we kind of, I'm not sure what 8th grade was, I think it was like 15%, and it jumped to 30%. So we definitely want to hit the ground running with the freshmen. We also have Link Crew, which we started at the beginning of the year. It's kind of get to know one another. It's a mixer for an entire morning of students just trying to get to know and understand each other. It doesn't just stop there. We have certain things throughout sophomore, junior, and senior year that, you know, we try to teach, and we have lunch and learns, and we bring in students to work with staff as far as what they need, what's going on in regards to depression, suicide, and stress. So we have a lot going on. We have constantly professionals in and out of our building, so it's great.
Okay. So a long answer to your good question. What else? Yes.
Do you know of any research that compares the outcomes of the later school day, sorry to all the educators, of the students, the teens starting later, and if there's any data showing decreased depression or suicide rate?
No. The question is, what about starting later school days and the effect on depression? I've seen nothing on that. I mean, I have my dad's impression, but I've got no data behind it. So.
Do you ever see anything
No, I mean, obviously, I think when students struggle with depression, they struggle. We have many students that struggle getting up in the morning.
Right.
The interesting part about that is when you work with a lot of those students, and the great thing about our school district is that we're small enough that we individualize things for kids. And if we know of a kid struggling, we have something called core teams. So we have 4 different teams, and they're all alpha split, and in each team is a dean, a social worker, a counselor, behavioral interventionist, and a psychologist. And if something is red flagged to us, whether it's through social, emotional, academics, we kind of sit down, we talk about the kid, and we talk, do we need to call the parent? Do we need to call the kid? And what interventions do we need to do? And the interesting part is that when we have students who seem to arrive late and okay, let's fix their schedule, let's make it so that they come in later. And then, so they come in for second period, but then they can't get up for second period. So it's more than just late start for schools. It's really about therapy and at times, if you want to, medication. That is key.
Yes, sir.
I'm just going to make a comment that many of the identifiers that you have listed, teens sort of, going in their own, kind of isolation and all
Mm-hmm.
that. Looking at the social media and the technology world that we live in, most kids,
Mm-hmm.
of the kids that we know, they're actually hanging out on the social
Right.
media.
Mm-hmm.
So some of those, they may be in their own world, but they're perfectly fine.
Right.
Kind of hanging out. So my question was that, are there any efforts, initiatives to sort of, reach out to the social media community and see if you can identify some, kind of catch them? I mean, where there are signs,
Mhm.
those are easy ones, right? Where there
Right.
are no signs,
Mhm.
and somebody has posted a plan on
You're,
Facebook. How
there's
do you
there's really
proactively
there's a couple of things that are embedded in your question. One is that a lot of these individual, we'll call them signs, I won't even call them symptoms, are not specific to depression or suicide. Lots of kids stay in the room and play video games. It's true. And keep in mind, the problem is the base rate of suicidal behavior. It's, 15, 16 per 100,000. The base rate is so low that it's statistically impossible to develop an algorithm for predicting suicidality in any individual youngster, or adult for that matter. We're left then with the challenge as clinicians and as parents of sort of discerning how the pattern of the symptoms. It's when they come together as a cluster that we start to become worried, but an individual symptom, probably not. Now, your question about social media, and can one monitor social media to garner this information, that's a really interesting and challenging question. And I have to tell you, not that the federal government is interested in scanning the media to see what children are saying, because they're really not. But the ways in which apps and phones can be used to address depression and, well, psychopathology generally in lots of ways is really quite breathtaking. And that is an initiative of the federal government, of the National Institute of Health and the National Institute of Mental Health. There's a program down, if you're interested in such things, down at Northwestern, led by a guy named David Moore, who's really quite brilliant. He came over from UCSF about 5 years ago, and it's called CBITS, C-B-I-T-S. And their whole focus is on developing technology to help people in their day-to-day lives. And so our project with the CDC, developing the app, is going to be done in conjunction with CBITS. But the interesting thing, I'll just give you a small example of the ways in which technology can be used, is if you have a particular app on your phone. I didn't realize this, but our apps are all, our phones are all being checked, our locations off of satellites and with people around you. Is you can develop a depression app that notes, excuse me, I've noticed, bing, bing, you look at your phone, I noticed you've been sitting in the same place. Wouldn't you like to get up and go for a walk? Your phone knows that you haven't been moving. It's also bouncing signals off of other phones near you. I'm seeing that you're standing next to the person who you went out drinking with last weekend. Is this really where, and you're next to a bar, is this really a place where you're high risk? Not that you want your phone to be Big Brother, but in essence, your phone can be used to guide you towards more adaptive behavior. Whether it's dieting, and you really don't need to walk into that Dunkin' Donuts that you're walking into, or towards that I can see you're hanging around with a bunch of kids who you were doing drugs with last week. I didn't know that phones could do these sorts of things.
You
But
talked
this-
about mood monitoring.
But, well, mood monitoring is actually pretty simple. That's where, you know, we pick out a specific set of moods, depression, anxiety, pessimism, and thoughts of death, and you just have your person, and your phone rings, and you sit, and it comes up with a little, actually, we would have either a little person, typically they like teenagers, like people on them that will talk to them, and the little person will come on the phone and say, how are you feeling today? Why don't you do a little self-rating? And you move the little arrow over on how depressed, anxious, pessimistic, and suicidal thoughts. The little guy says, I can see you're feeling worse today than yesterday. What are your thoughts? Where's this coming from? And what would happen then, it would become interactive with the software. Because you can develop software that identifies word streams, just like Siri, and can interpret them. And, you know, I wonder, it sounds like you're really feeling down. Wouldn't you like to talk to somebody? Can I suggest you click on the, you know, why don't you talk to your school counselor? You can get your app to interact with you. These are very sophisticated systems for monitoring mood and activity on a day-to-day basis. And you can see where this all started with dieting and exercise, and now it's moving into the realm of how people lead their lives in healthy or unhealthy ways. It's going to be breathtaking. So that's where this is all moving, but we're not there yet. Healthy apps help us to lead healthy lives. What else? Yes?
Not really a good question asker, but something that has kind of been on my mind. I don't have children, teenagers yet, but I was wondering if, how as a parent can you decipher the tendencies of a perfectionist, so to speak, from a child who may be, you know, on a depressive path? You know, as a parent,
It's a very good question. The question is, how do you distinguish perfectionism from depression? And we've actually done research on this. And I'll tell you, perfectionism is a two-edged sword. It leads to great achievement, but it comes at a cost. And I think that we should abandon, this is Mark as a clinician, we should abandon the construct of perfectionism. I wince when I see that Lexus commercial saying the relentless pursuit of perfection. That's not what we should be doing. It's not what our children should be doing. The notion, because in our research what you find is the trait of perfectionism is not only associated with level of depression, but risk for relapse of depression. So this sort of, how would you put it, mindful and acceptant stance. And it's an almost Eastern Buddhist stance that I'll take what life gives me and I'll be able to cope with it when it arrives, as opposed to relentlessly striving for perfection, puts you in a much better stance. And actually, if you want to, when we're done here, if you give me a minute, I've got a set of PowerPoint slides on it, which really take the message home, which I'd be happy to show you. Okay? Yes? I can if you want, but I wasn't, you know. Yeah, sure. You know something, email me and I'll send you a copy.
Well, you have our emails on the list.
Oh, okay.
We can just, yeah, we can send
Yeah.
Yeah, I can send you a PDF. That'd be easy enough to do. Yes?
It will be on Lake Forest TV too.
Oh,
I
that's
mean,
right. Yes, everything's on the
We're
TV
gonna post
station.
it on a website, probably Leeds website. So
Okay.
we'll get information out.
Yes. Right, right. The question is, many teenagers, even when they're feeling distressed, one is they try to conceal it, which is true, and the second is they really don't want help. That really, there's two things there. One is go back to what we were saying before, which is talking to your teen and have them feel understood. Let's put it out on the table. You seem upset to me today. I'm not, I'm fine. Really? You know and I know that you're not feeling fine. What's on your mind? What's going on? And if you put them in a place where they feel safe in discussing what's on their mind, their thoughts and their feelings, their frustrations and their goals. They will put them out on the table. Now, I will give you a Mark's clinical tip, what I tell my grad students. If you ask a teen, how you feeling today? What do they say? Fine. You feeling depressed? No. Anxious, worried? No. Other than that calculus test tomorrow. Now, you feeling stressed out? Oh yeah. Teenagers will opt for stressed. So if you use, hey man, you look stressed out to me. Oh, tell me about it. Okay, tell me about it. That becomes your entree. Teens will always opt to, I feel stressed. They'll also opt to how everybody else is a loser and doesn't understand them. And if you, so how's everything going at school? These other kids at school, how are they treating you lately? Oh God, they suck. Tell me about that. If you let them lead with the things that are emotionally on their mind, and I'm just here to listen, and they will bring it to you. Now, getting them to treatment. In some sense, that's the parent's job. You know, once a year, one time a year, I'll get a teenager who goes, Mom, I really need to see a doc. It's rare. Most teens are referred by a teacher or their parent. That's okay. I get that. That's the way they are. But if they can see two things, three things. One, you're miserable. You're not happy. And it doesn't have to be this way. I don't want you to feel this way. You look bad. They will accept that. You're seeing how they actually feel. They can't deny it. That's how they're feeling. Second, I want them to envision their life that's different. The question I ask, how would you like to be that's different and better than the way you are now? What would you like your life to be like? They will have a vision for a positive future. The question is, how can I bring this about? What can we do to bring you there? You're miserable and there's a better future. Then the third, and they call it, it's basically developing their motivation, that they can see a positive future, and if we could get somebody to help you get there, would you accept it? Would you talk to him or her? Usually they'll go, yeah, sure, why not? And that's all I ask for is a neutral response. Because once the youngster comes in to see me and they realize, hey, Reineke's okay. Reineke understands me. He listens to me. You know, that's what not just me, but any good clinician will do is they'll let the teen feel that their clinician, their doc, is their advocate. And then they're all in. Then they want to come in. So, because they feel better when they come in. Okay? But you got to guide them there. Yes?
I'm Todd Hagan from Croya, and I am on the Community Wellness Task Force. I just want to highlight one thing that I think has been so special about the task force is that over the course of the last years, it's not that we've reinvented the wheel. Some of the things that Dr. Reineke has talked about, and Ingrid and John, the things that we have been doing for many years, some of which are new, of course, which are great. But what the task force has done is taken the silos and merged them. And we are doing so much more in collaboration with different groups. Croya and the high school has pretty well been a team for many years. But I think what we've seen is that the language, if you talk about the doctors and the professionals, whether it be social workers, psychologists, the teachers, the administration, the staff at Croya, the lead people, you've got groups that are working together consistently. And when we head to these meetings for this task force, it's just powerful. It's really,
it really is. This little sheet captures it. It's all of, when I say us, it's all of us together working on this. It's a collective we on the North Shore addressing these problems. Yeah.
I'm Esther Harris, and I'm a social worker at the hospital. I'm also a parent, and I'm in this community with current adolescents and another one. And I think a couple things. First of all, I think teens choose to talk when we're not ready, oftentimes. You know, it's when you're right in the middle of doing something and you have the least amount of time, I think we can all relate, is when they have to talk to you right then and there. And I say with adolescents, that's when you gotta really grab it and listen, because they're gonna do it on their time schedule, not yours, and they're usually gonna do it when you can't look at them. You know, if you're driving or something like that. But the other thing is, and when we talk about that we're all as a team, and that the power of the sum of the parts is so much greater, I think that's the same with parents, and I often think with parents that you get so stuck sometimes, or some people do, I do, whatever, with your own child, and but to reach out to somebody else and just say, because you can't see the forest from the trees sometimes when you're in it, you know, that someone else, maybe someone from one of these other organizations or someone somewhere else can help you find the words. So if you can't find a way to get your child into treatment that you think they need, you know what? Go yourself then and help them. Get yourself help on how to help them, because it's affecting you too. I don't know, it just sometimes we can help each other find the words.
Other thoughts? It's all good? Anything else? All right. Well,
Thank you very
all
much for
very much.
donating your
And
time.
thank you, Dr. Heineke.